Okay. So you can see here file handling. All file handling related classes are available under java.io package and ready-made. Everything is created. So we don't need to do anything. Just you need to consume them. You need to use them. So all classes with methods are ready-made. So what you need to do is you need to create object, and here plays a major role is constructors. So parameterized constructors. Mostly all classes are having parameterized constructors. You have to pass the parameter value while creating object for the classes. That's what we learned in the constructors, right? So the same concept we are going to use. But here, the two concepts mainly. One is how to read the data from file. So in the file, you have a data. So that data you need to read to your Java code. How you can read that. That's the first scenario. The second scenario, you have a data either in your program or in the file. So one file data, how to write to another file. Or you have a data in your code, in your variables, how you can write that data to the files. These are the two scenarios we need to understand. So let's start understanding how we can read the data, how we can write the data. So for reading process, you must have a file already exist in your system or in your project location. And you have to give that file path to the classes. And here for reading the data from any file, it can be text file, it can be doc file, it can be properties file, it can be any file, XML file, it doesn't matter. The file which has a data. So that data we need to read through our program. How we can do that? So first you can use, these are the classes you can use. File input stream is the class which reads byte-based data. Basically, the data will stream in the network either byte format or character format. So that's you need to understand how internally the data will flow. Basically, data will flow in the pockets, right, in the network layer. So that data will go in the byte format or character format. So how we can read that? So you can use either file input stream class or buffered input stream class, reader class, abstract class, file reader class, buffer reader class. File class is a common. To represent any file, you need to use a file class object so that will be represented a file. So for all these classes, if you want to use, you need to create object. Then you can, so file class mainly is to represent the file, where it is a text file or properties file or any file you want to represent it is a file. You will create object for a file class and pass the file path. So that is the concept we are going to follow here. And file input stream or buffered input stream, both will read the byte data from any file. You can tell why two classes. File input stream will read a 1 by 1 byte. So 1 byte it will read, and after sending again it will go and read next byte. So that's a 1 by 1 byte it will read. So that's a slow process, right? If there large files are there, and you cannot use that file input stream alone is not sufficient. If you have a large data, you can use buffered input stream. Buffered input stream class you can use. Basically, buffered input stream, what it will do. So you might have heard about buffering concept, right? So it will buffer the data and continuous streaming will happen. So all the data will be stored in some temporary location. From there, continuous streaming will happen. No stopping in middle. right? So that's a buffering. Buffering will improve the speed. The reading process will improve. That's a buffered input stream means. And these two are used for the reading process. Any byte data from any of these files. Same time, we have a character-based data you want to read. You can use file reader class. File reader, it will read the one by one character at a time, and it will send to the your Java code. Buffer reader again, a large chunk of characters at a time it will read. That's the buffer reader concept. Okay, so once you understand these classes, what are the methods? Classes just templates, right? But only action is done by methods. Who will do the reading process? So there is a read method. Read method on all these classes reads either byte or character data. Read line method reads the entire line. It reads the entire line if you use the buffer reader. So buffer reader, if you're using, you need to use a read line method. A large chunk of characters I told, right? So the buffer reader will read the large chunk of characters. So that time you have to use a read line method. And now we understand how to read. Now, how to write the data? To write the data, we are going to use a file output stream and buffered output stream. Writer class, writer abstract class, and file writer class, buffer writer. So file output stream, same as a file input stream. File input stream means you are inputting the data from file to your program. File output stream means you are outputting the data to the file. That means you are writing the data. Buffered output stream also, it will write large chunk of bytes at a time. So that's a buffered output stream means. And we have file writer class. File writer class basically write the one character at a time, but buffer writer will write the large chunk of data at a time. So here we need to understand you want to append or override the existing data while writing. So you can discuss these points in this file writer and buffer writer theory. So if you want to write the data, we are going to use a write method. So then it write the either byte or character based on the what data you are. So it based on this class. File output stream if you use byte data. So if you use a file writer, character data will write. And after write method, you must call the flush method. So the old stream should go away, new stream should come. You need to call the flush. If you call the flush, so old stream will flush out and next stream, so will start. So that's the flush out. So new line, cursor will move to next line. Cursor will move to next line. So these are the methods we are going to use for reading and writing the data. Let's go and see the one by one. So first you have to create object for file class. File f equal to new file. See, you have to give constructor, parameterized constructor, file location you pass it. And second one, create object for file input stream class. So file input stream, fs equal to new file input stream and pass the which file you want to read. From which file you want to read that file to location you can pass this. And then you can call the read method. So again, if it is a large file, you have to use a loop. So I have to, so I will show you that in the program, how we are looping one by one byte and how you are getting that. And you have to use a buffered input stream if there is a large data in the file. So that the speed will increase, the reading process will increase. That's the buffered input stream concept. And buffered input stream, again, you create object for a file input stream, then you can create object for a buffered input stream. base equal to new buffered input stream and pass the FIS object. So, but alone you cannot create object for buffered input stream. There must be a file input stream. File input stream object mandatory for the buffered input stream object. So you have to pass that buffered input stream constructor inside FIS object you have to pass. File input stream object reference you have to pass. That's it. So file input stream first you have to create object. That object reference you pass it here. File reader and buffer reader. So as I mentioned, read method reads the byte data or character data. Read line will read the entire line. So if you are working with a file reader, okay, file reader. So while working with the files, we need to handle the exceptions in our code. Again, exception handling is coming here. Without exception handling, file handling doesn't work out at all. So file reader class makes it possible to read the one character at a time. And so this is how you're going to use file reader also. File reader object you create, fr equal to new file reader and pass the file path, which file onwards you are reading. So that file path you need to provide. So buffer reader class provides buffering to our file reader. So rather than reading one character at a time, so it will read the large block of data at a time. So that's why you will use a buffer reader class. File reader fr equal to new file reader and buffer reader text reader equal to new buffer reader. So you will pass this fr. So this fr you are passing here. So that's how you can read the data from file. Otherwise, you can specify, for example, by default, it will read the 8192 characters, but you want to reduce your custom size. So then you can specify, okay, read only 1000 characters, not 8192 characters. You can use buffer size you declare, and that variable you can pass it to constructor. This is a parameterized constructor, right? So we are using a single parameterized constructor, but here we are using a two parameterized constructor. It's all the parameters that makes difference, which constructor you want. So that's the how to read the data with the file input stream and file reader classes. Okay, so that I'll show you. Let's move on to the how to write data to the file. So you have to create object for file output stream. File output stream FS equal to new file output stream. So that you pass the file location. So buffered output stream, create object for buffered output stream, new buffered output stream of this FOS. So it's mandatory to create object for file output stream before calling the buffered output stream. And the right method we can use and flush method we have to mandatorily use that flush method. Otherwise, the data won't flush out and next stream doesn't come back. So file writer class makes it possible to write the only one character it will write. So file writer FW equal to new file writer file path. In case we want to control whether to append or overwrite into a file, you can use Boolean append equal to true. Parameterized constructor use a single parameterized constructor, right? Now here you use the two parameterized constructor. You're telling file path append. So you can append the data. You can append the data. So it will append, but here it will overwrite. Every time you are writing, so new data only will be there in the file, old data will be overwritten. It will override and that will be deleted and new data only will be applied. And by default, it is a false. So the append is false. That's why you don't need to specify here. So false means it will overwrite. And here you are specifically telling true. So that's why it will append. It will append. So that's the difference between file writer class. You want to append or you want to overwrite. So buffer writer class provides buffering for writer. So you can write large chunk of data at a time with buffer writer class. So how to use this buffer writer? First, create object for file writer, fw equal to new file writer, and pass the file path. Which file you want to write, that file you need to give it here. And buffer writer bw equal to new buffer writer. So fw, so we can pass this file writer object here. So this is the how we can write the data. Let's go and know practice the programs so that you can get a better idea. So I'll stop this theory part and then let's move on.